The champagne fountains sparkled under the chandeliers, each bubble catching light like tiny diamonds, but all I could see was the folder hidden in my clutch, the one containing papers that would transform this wedding reception into something far more memorable than my daughter had planned. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Mom, you're trembling. Elena's voice pulled me back to the present moment. My daughter stood before me in her grandmother's restored lace gown, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo, concern creasing her porcelain forehead. Are you okay? I steadied my champagne flute, the crystal stem nearly slipping from my perspiring palm. Just emotional, sweetheart. Watching you marry Nathan brings up so many memories. That much was honest. 26 years ago, I'd worn my own mother's dress, believing I was marrying a man who would build a life with me. Instead, I'd spent over 2 decades building everything myself while Marcus took credit, spent lavishly, and apparently, somewhere along the way, fell in love with someone half his age. Where's Dad? Elena glanced around the country club's grand ballroom, her reception in full swing. He said he had something important to announce during the toasts. My jaw tightened. I knew exactly what Marcus planned to announce. 3 days ago, I'd received an anonymous text, a screenshot of Marcus's messages to someone named Sienna, complete with details about how he planned to introduce her to everyone at Elena's wedding. The gall of it. The absolute audacity to use our daughter's sacred day as his coming-out party. What Marcus didn't know was that anonymous text had come from someone at his office, someone who'd also forwarded me 18 months of financial records. Records that painted a picture so devastating, so catastrophically reckless, that I'd spent the past 72 hours assembling my own surprise announcement. I'm sure he'll be here soon, I managed, watching the double doors where the groom's father was entertaining guests with slightly inappropriate fishing stories. The past 3 days had been a masterclass in restraint. While finalizing wedding seating charts and confirming vendor deliveries, I'd simultaneously been coordinating with forensic accountants, bankruptcy attorneys, and private investigators. While helping Elena into her dress this morning, checking that every pearl button was secured, I'd received the final confirmation I needed. Marcus had indeed filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy 4 days ago, timing it for right after the wedding when he assumed I'd be too devastated by his engagement announcement to focus on anything else. He'd miscalculated. There he is. Elena waved, her face brightening as Marcus emerged from the country club's smoking terrace, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his custom Armani tuxedo fitting him like he belonged in a cologne advertisement. At 53, my soon-to-be ex-husband still turned heads. Too bad his financial sense never matched his appearance. Marcus made his way through the crowd, stopping to shake hands with Nathan's grandfather, pausing to accept congratulations from Elena's godparents, his smile wide and practiced. I recognized that smile. It was the same one he'd worn when he'd convinced me to refinance our house to fund his guaranteed real estate venture in 2019. The same one from when he'd asked me to co-sign the business loan for his luxury car dealership that folded within 18 months. Every financial disaster delivered with that same confident grin. "Victoria, darling, you look stunning." Marcus appeared beside me, his cologne, Creed Aventus, $545 a bottle, overwhelming my senses. "Maternal glow suits you." I forced myself to smile, to play the role of the gracious, almost ex-wife just a little longer. We'd been separated for 11 months, divorce proceedings crawling through the courts, at a glacial pace thanks to Marcus's attorney's constant delays and continuances. Now I understood why. You can't divide assets properly when one party is systematically hiding them in shell companies while simultaneously drowning in debt. "Marcus." I nodded, taking a careful sip of champagne. Elena mentioned you have an announcement? Something flickered across his face. Excitement. Maybe nervousness. All in good time. The best man needs to give his toast first. Tradition and all that. Tradition. The man who'd secretly mortgaged our family home without telling me wanted to lecture about tradition. Nathan's best man, a college friend named Derek, was already moving toward the microphone, champagne glass in hand. The reception had transitioned perfectly from dinner to toasts, Elena's meticulous planning evident in every detail. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. The florals, ivory roses and deep purple calla lilies, created an atmosphere of understated elegance. Everything was perfect. For the next 4 minutes, I barely heard Derek's speech. Something about Nathan's fraternity days, a funny story about a road trip to Vegas, wishes for happiness. Polite laughter rippled through the 150 guests. I applauded at the appropriate moments, my mind elsewhere. The folder in my clutch contained so much more than bankruptcy papers. Inside were statements showing how Marcus had taken out credit cards in both our names, maxing them out on luxury purchases and gambling trips to Atlantic City. Documentation of the second mortgage he'd secured using forged signatures. My signatures, according to the handwriting expert I'd hired. Evidence of his affair with Sienna Chen, his 28-year-old executive assistant, including receipts from the apartment he'd been renting for her in downtown Philadelphia for the past 14 months. The apartment he'd been paying for with withdrawals from Elena's college fund, which I'd diligently contributed to for 24 years. He'd stolen from our daughter's future to fund his midlife crisis. That was the part that had transformed my shock into cold, calculated fury. Now, I believe the father of the bride would like to say a few words, the DJ announced, handing the microphone to Marcus. Elena squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with champagne and happiness. I hope he doesn't embarrass me with baby stories. If she only knew what was coming. Marcus stood at the center of the ballroom, the spotlight catching the gold of his cufflinks, the ones I'd given him for our 20th anniversary, back when I still believed we were building something together. He cleared his throat, that practiced smile spreading across his face. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Elena and Nathan's beautiful union. His voice carried perfectly, years of sales presentations giving him stage presence. As I stand here looking at my daughter, our daughter, I'm reminded that life is about taking chances, embracing change, and following your heart wherever it leads. I felt the shift in the room's energy. Something was off about his tone, too personal for a father of the bride toast. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elena, sweetheart, you've taught me something valuable this past year as I've watched you prepare for today. Marcus's eyes swept the room before landing on our daughter. You've shown me that it's never too late to choose happiness, to be brave enough to start a new chapter. My hand tightened around my clutch. Here it comes. Which is why I want to take this opportunity, surrounded by family and friends, to share some news of my own. Marcus gestured toward the French doors leading to the terrace. Sienna, would you join me? The room went silent. Even the jazz stopped, the DJ apparently sensing the shift in atmosphere. A young woman entered, her red dress a stark contrast to the wedding's ivory and purple palette. She was beautiful in an obvious way, highlighted blonde hair, carefully contoured makeup, a figure that suggested either excellent genetics or an equally excellent surgeon. She moved to Marcus's side, her hand finding his. Everyone, this is Sienna Chen. Marcus's voice filled with warmth that I hadn't heard him use in years, certainly not when speaking to me. We've been together for 18 months, and I've asked her to marry me. She's said yes. The shock rippled outward like a stone thrown into still water. I watched it hit Elena first, her face draining of color, her champagne glass lowering slowly to the table. Then Nathan, his arm instinctively moving around his bride's shoulders. Then the guests, their expressions ranging from horror to confusion to poorly concealed delight at the unexpected drama. Marcus seemed oblivious to the destruction he'd just detonated. I know this is unconventional, but Elena's courage in following her heart inspired me to follow mine. Life's too short to... Dad. Elena's voice cut through his speech, quiet but sharp. You're engaged? I wanted to share this moment with everyone who matters most. Marcus smiled, squeezing Sienna's hand. I know it's a surprise, but... You're announcing your engagement at my wedding? Elena stood, her voice rising. At my wedding? What is wrong with you? The ballroom erupted in whispers. Marcus's smile faltered, apparently just now realizing that his daughter might not appreciate having her reception hijacked for his announcement. Elena, sweetheart, I thought you'd be happy for me. You said yourself that Mom and I have been separated almost a year. It's time to move forward. Time to move forward? Elena's voice shook with tears. By making a spectacle of yourself at your daughter's wedding? By introducing your... She couldn't even finish the sentence. I stood, placing a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. Inside, I was a churning storm of rage, but I kept my voice steady, calm. It's all right, sweetheart. Your father has every right to share his news. Marcus looked relieved, clearly interpreting my words as acceptance. He had no idea. In fact, I continued, reaching into my clutch for the folder. Since we're sharing surprising announcements, I have something to share as well. The room's attention shifted to me. I saw confusion in Marcus's eyes, quickly followed by the first flicker of concern. Marcus, darling, while you've been busy planning your new beginning, I've been doing some planning of my own. I opened the folder, pulling out the first document. Did you know that the country club requires final payment for events 30 days in advance? What are you talking about? Marcus's smile had completely vanished. I'm talking about the fact that I paid for this entire wedding. Every flower arrangement, every appetizer, every bottle of champagne. I looked around the room at the guests, many of whom were leaning forward with interest. I paid for it because you, Marcus, couldn't, because 4 days ago, you filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The whispers exploded into audible gasps. Sienna's perfectly made-up face went pale. Victoria, this is not the time or place. Marcus started toward me. Isn't it? I pulled out another document. You just announced your engagement to a woman young enough to be your daughter at your actual daughter's wedding. I think we've established that this is exactly the time and place for uncomfortable truths. Elena sank back into her chair, Nathan holding her steady. I could see the questions forming in my daughter's eyes, but I needed to finish this before Marcus could spin his narrative. For those who don't know, bankruptcy is a fascinating legal process, I continued, my voice carrying clearly in the silent ballroom. It requires full disclosure of all assets, all debts, all financial transactions for the past several years. Marcus filed his petition on Tuesday morning, probably assuming that by today, Saturday evening, I'd be too focused on Elena's happiness to notice. You're making a scene, Marcus hissed, moving closer. Whatever issues we have, we can discuss them privately. Like you discussed taking a second mortgage on our house? Oh wait, you didn't discuss that. You forged my signature on the papers. I held up the handwriting analysis report. Or, like you discussed withdrawing $47,000 from Elena's college fund? No, you just did that too, didn't you? Needed to fund your new apartment for Sienna here. Sienna's eyes went wide. You said that apartment was paid for by your investment portfolio. Investment portfolio. I actually laughed, the sound sharp and bitter in the silent ballroom. Marcus hasn't successfully invested in anything since 1998. What he has done is accumulate $340,000 in credit card debt, much of it in my name without my knowledge, lose $180,000 in a failed car dealership venture, and apparently spend another $65,000 on luxury gifts, trips, and romantic gestures for you, Sienna. All while we were still legally married and supposedly working on our separation agreement. The room was silent except for the sound of someone, Elena's Aunt Patricia, gasping into her napkin. Marcus's face had gone from tan to red to an alarming shade of purple. "You vindictive." "Careful," I warned. "We're at our daughter's wedding. Let's maintain some decorum." I pulled out more papers. Now, the bankruptcy itself wouldn't be quite so scandalous if it weren't for the creative accounting. You see, Marcus claimed he had no valuable assets. No savings, no investments, no property besides his half of our marital home, which he claimed was essentially worthless due to being underwater on mortgages. I paused for effect, looking around the room at the rapt faces. Except he forgot about the lake house. Well, not forgot. Tried to hide it by putting it in his brother's name 18 months ago, right around the time he met Sienna. Unfortunately for Marcus, his brother kept very detailed emails about how this was all a temporary measure to hide assets from Victoria during the divorce. Marcus's brother Greg, seated near the back of the ballroom with his wife, suddenly became very interested in his dinner plate. "That's bankruptcy fraud," I explained helpfully. "A federal crime, the kind that carries a prison sentence of up to 5 years, plus substantial fines." "You can't prove any of this," Marcus snarled, all pretense of civility evaporating. "Actually, I can. I have 18 months of financial records. Thanks to a very helpful source at your office. Someone who got tired of watching you steal from the company while laying off hardworking employees to cut costs." I pulled out another set of documents. Which brings me to the embezzlement. Did anyone here know that Marcus has been the CFO of Hartwell Manufacturing for 7 years? Show of hands? About a third of the room raised their hands, confused but following along. And did you know that over the past 3 years, Marcus has been systematically embezzling funds from the company through a scheme involving fake vendors and inflated invoices? No. Well, neither did Hartwell Manufacturing's board of directors until I sent them this complete documentation 3 days ago. Marcus lunged forward, trying to grab the papers from my hands. But Nathan's father, a former college football player who'd kept his linebacker build, stepped smoothly between us. "You need to calm down, Marcus," Tom said quietly, his hand on Marcus's chest. "Let her finish." "Thank you, Tom." I smoothed the papers, though my hands were shaking now from adrenaline. The embezzlement totals approximately $280,000 over 3 years. The company has already filed a criminal complaint. I believe the FBI is actually quite interested in speaking with you, Marcus. They've been trying to reach you all day, but you've been busy, obviously. Elena found her voice, trembling and small. "Mom, is this all true?" I turned to my daughter, my heart breaking at the devastation on her face. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I wanted to tell you before today, but I only got the final confirmations this morning, and I couldn't ruin your wedding day. I thought." I looked at Marcus, at Sienna standing frozen beside him. "I thought he'd at least have the decency to not make a spectacle of himself at your reception." "The college fund," Elena whispered. "My college fund that I was going to use to start my business." "Is gone," I confirmed gently. "He spent it. All of it." The sound Elena made was somewhere between a sob and a growl. She stood yanking off her heels and advanced on her father with a fury I'd never seen from my usually gentle daughter. "You stole from me?" Each word was punctuated with a step forward. "You stole my money for your mistress?" "Elena, let me explain." Marcus backed up. Explain what? That you're a liar? A thief? That you ruined Mom's credit? Stole from your own daughter and committed federal crimes? What exactly would you like to explain, Dad? Nathan appeared at Elena's side, his jaw tight with barely contained anger. Sir, I think you should leave. This is my daughter's wedding. That Mom paid for because you're broke. Elena's voice cracked. You've been lying to all of us for years. You stood up here and gave advice about following your heart, about new beginnings, while knowing you'd stolen from me, from Mom, from everyone stupid enough to trust you. Sienna, who had been silent through all of this, finally spoke up. Marcus, you told me you were wealthy. You said the divorce was just a formality, that Victoria was being difficult about the settlement because you had so much money. Sienna, I can explain. You paid for our apartment with stolen money. Sienna's perfectly made-up face was now streaked with tears. You took me on vacation to St. Bart's using your daughter's college fund? You went to St. Bart's? Elena's voice went dangerously quiet. I pulled out one more paper. First class. The Four Seasons. He also bought her a Cartier bracelet, $12,000, and a Peloton bike, which I only mention because he once told me we couldn't afford to fix the foundation issues in our house. Sienna was crying openly now. I thought you loved me. I quit my job because you said you'd take care of everything. Oh, honey. I actually felt sorry for her. He told me the same thing 26 years ago. The country club's manager appeared at the edge of the chaos, looking uncertain. Is everything all right? Should I call someone? Security would be good, I suggested. And perhaps the police. I believe there's a warrant being issued as we speak. Marcus's eyes went wild. You can't do this to me, Victoria, after everything I've done for this family. Everything you've done? I moved closer to him, my voice dropping low so only those nearest could hear. You've stolen, lied, cheated, and betrayed every single person who ever trusted you. You used our daughter's wedding, her wedding, as the stage for announcing your affair. You filed for bankruptcy to avoid paying what you owe in our divorce. You committed federal crimes. What exactly do you think you've done for this family, Marcus? Besides destroy it? The fight seemed to drain out of him. His shoulders slumped, the mask of confidence finally cracking to reveal the desperate, pathetic man underneath. I need to use the restroom, he mumbled, trying to push past Tom. I don't think so. Tom's grip tightened. You're going to stay right here until the police arrive. The police! Marcus looked around wildly. Victoria, please. Can't we work this out? I'll fix everything. I'll get the money back somehow. There is no working this out. My voice was steady now, all the anger burning down to cold certainty. You filed for bankruptcy. You committed fraud. You stole from your own daughter. Those aren't things I can fix, Marcus. Those are things you did. Those are choices you made. Elena had collapsed back into her chair, Nathan hovering over her with tissues while his mother brought water. My daughter's perfect wedding day had been transformed into a crime scene, her father revealed as a criminal, her mother as the prosecutor. I'd done this. To protect myself, to protect Elena's future, to stop Marcus from doing more damage. But I'd still done this. I'd turned my daughter's wedding reception into a public evisceration of her father. The guilt threatened to overwhelm me, but then I looked at Sienna, young and confused and beginning to realize she'd been used. I looked at Elena, devastated but also angry, righteously angry at being betrayed. I looked at Marcus, finally seeing himself clearly in the mirror of everyone's disgusted faces. This was necessary. It was brutal and public and devastating, but it was necessary. Mom. Elena's voice was small. Can we get out of here? Please? Of course, sweetheart. I moved to her side, helping her stand. Let's go to the bridal suite. Get you somewhere quiet. As we moved toward the door, the guests parted like the Red Sea. I could feel their stares, hear their whispered conversations starting up. Tomorrow, this would be all over town. The wedding where the mother exposed the father's crimes, the reception that ended with bankruptcy and embezzlement. But as Elena leaned against me, Nathan supporting her other side, I knew I'd made the right choice. Marcus had chosen to use this day as his stage. I'd simply taken back the microphone. The country club manager met us in the hallway, his face a mask of professional concern. "Mrs. Hartwell, the police are on their way. They'd like to speak with you about the documentation you mentioned." "Of course. I have everything they need." I looked back toward the ballroom, where Tom still had Marcus contained, where Sienna was sobbing into her hands, where 150 guests were probably already texting everyone they knew. "And please, make sure everyone has their meals and drinks. The bar stays open. This is still a wedding reception after all." The manager blinked in surprise but nodded. "Of course, ma'am." In the bridal suite, Elena finally let herself collapse. Great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Nathan held her close, his own eyes red-rimmed, while his mother and I stood helplessly by. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I whispered, kneeling beside the antique chair where she sat. "I'm so sorry." "Why didn't you tell me?" Elena looked up, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Why did you let me find out like this?" "I only got the final proof 3 days ago. I wanted to tell you, but you were so happy, so excited. I thought—" I took a shaky breath. "I thought he'd at least have the decency to not make a scene at your wedding. I thought I could wait until after your honeymoon, give you a few weeks of happiness before destroying everything." And then he brought her here. Understanding dawned in Elena's eyes. He actually brought her to my wedding and announced their engagement. He did. "So you destroyed him?" "I did. I didn't apologize for that part. I couldn't." Elena was quiet for a long moment, just breathing, Nathan's arms around her. Then she said something that surprised me. "Good." I looked up at her tear-stained face. "Good," she repeated, stronger now. "He deserved it. Maybe not the timing, but the exposure. He deserved every second of that." Her voice hardened. "He stole from me. From us. He was going to get away with it, wasn't he? The bankruptcy, the hidden assets. He had a plan. He did. He's been planning this for over a year. Systematically moving assets, creating shell companies, preparing for the divorce he knew was coming. If I hadn't gotten those documents, if that anonymous source hadn't contacted me—" I trailed off, not wanting to complete the thought. The sound of sirens reached us, growing louder. Police were arriving. Elena stood, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I need to fix my makeup. The photographer's probably having a heart attack. This is going to be the most interesting wedding album in history." Despite everything, I laughed. "That's my girl." "Mom?" Elena caught my hand. "Thank you for protecting me, for stopping him, for being brave enough to do what had to be done, even though it was horrible and public, and probably the worst moment of your life." "Second worst," I corrected. "Worst was when I read those documents and realized what he'd done to you. To us." "This?" I gestured toward the chaos outside. "This was just the reckoning." Nathan spoke up for the first time since we'd entered the suite. "Mrs. Hartwell, my father's a lawyer. Corporate law mostly. But he knows people. If you need help navigating what comes next—" "Thank you, Nathan. I have representation, but I appreciate the offer." I squeezed Elena's hand. "Now, let's get you cleaned up. Fix your makeup, touch up your hair. You're going to walk back into that reception with your head high. But Dad is being arrested, probably, which means the reception can continue. Your friends are out there, your new husband's family. Don't let Marcus ruin any more of your day than he already has." Elena looked uncertain, but nodded. Nathan's mother, Claire, a steel magnolia from Charleston with impeccable manners and hidden steel, stepped forward with makeup wipes and a cosmetics bag that seemed to appear from nowhere. "Now, darling," Claire said in her honey-smooth drawl, "let's get you presentable. My grandmother always said that living well is the best revenge, but living well while wearing perfect makeup is even better." As Claire worked on repairing Elena's face, I stepped out into the hallway. Two police officers stood with the country club manager speaking in low tones. Through the ballroom doors, I could see the reception had fractured into distinct groups. Guests clustered in shocked conversation, some already leaving, others apparently fascinated enough to stay for whatever came next. Marcus sat at a table near the French doors, Tom still standing guard, while Sienna had disappeared somewhere. The young woman's engagement announcement had turned into her own public humiliation. Part of me felt guilty about that, but a larger part remembered the apartment paid for with Elena's college fund and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. One of the officers approached me. "Mrs. Hartwell? I'm Officer Rodriguez. We understand you have documentation related to several serious allegations." "I do." I pulled the folder from my clutch, now slightly crumpled but intact. "Bankruptcy fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, forgery. It's all here, cross-referenced and documented. I've also sent digital copies to both the FBI and to Hartwell Manufacturing's legal team." Officer Rodriguez's eyebrows rose as he flipped through the papers. "This is comprehensive." "I'm a research librarian," I said simply. "Documentation is what I do." The irony wasn't lost on me. For 26 years, I'd used my skills to support the local university's library system, helping students and professors find information, verify sources, build comprehensive arguments. I'd just used those same skills to dismantle my husband's carefully constructed house of lies. "We'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement," Officer Rodriguez continued. "Tonight isn't necessary, given the circumstances, but within the next few days." "Of course." Monday morning? I had already taken the week off work, expecting to help with last-minute wedding preparations. Now I'd spent it helping law enforcement instead. "That works." He looked past me toward Marcus. "We're going to need to take Mr. Hartwell in for questioning. Given the federal charges pending, bail might be an issue." "I understand." I felt nothing watching them move toward my husband. No satisfaction, no guilt, just a hollow exhaustion. "Officer Rodriguez, please be discreet in front of the guests. It's still my daughter's wedding reception." He nodded, gesturing to his partner. They approached Marcus quietly, speaking in low tones I couldn't hear. Marcus stood, his face pale, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. As they led him toward the side exit, avoiding the main ballroom, thank God, he looked back at me. Our eyes met across the chaos of the interrupted reception. I saw hatred there, and fear, and a desperate, pathetic plea for mercy. I looked away. Elena emerged from the bridal suite, Nathan at her side. Her makeup was repaired, her hair smoothed, her spine straight. She looked like a queen preparing to face her kingdom. "Ready?" I asked. "No." She took a deep breath. "But let's do it anyway." We walked back into the ballroom together, mother, daughter, and new son-in-law. The conversations died as guests noticed our entrance. Elena moved to the center of the room, to the microphone that Marcus had used for his disastrous announcement. "Hi, everyone." Her voice shook slightly but held. "I'm sorry you all had to witness that absolute disaster. My father has... well, you all heard. He's made some spectacularly terrible choices." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "But this is still my wedding day." Elena reached for Nathan's hand. "And I refuse to let his decisions ruin what should be one of the happiest days of my life. So here's what's going to happen. The bar is staying open, courtesy of my mother, who apparently paid for literally everything. More laughter, warmer this time. The band is going to play, the cake is getting cut, and we're all going to celebrate love and commitment and the fact that some people, she looked pointedly at where Marcus had been sitting, have absolutely no concept of appropriate timing or basic human decency. Applause broke out. Not polite, hesitant applause, but real, enthusiastic support. Elena smiled, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Now, Nathan and I have a first dance to finish, and I really need all of you to pretend that the last 20 minutes didn't happen. Can you do that for me? The band struck up the opening notes of their first dance song, All of Me, by John Legend, sweet and romantic. Nathan swept Elena into his arms, and they moved across the floor with grace that belied the emotional chaos of the past hour. I watched from the edge of the dance floor, clutching my now empty champagne glass, feeling the full weight of what I'd done settling onto my shoulders. I'd protected Elena's future, exposed Marcus's crimes, prevented further damage, but I'd also ruined my daughter's wedding day in a way that would never, ever be forgotten. Claire appeared at my elbow, pressing a fresh glass of champagne into my hand. That took courage, she said quietly. What you did? It took courage. It took desperation, I corrected, and rage. Those two. She clinked her glass against mine. But mostly courage. Too many women stay silent, let men like Marcus continue to damage and destroy because confrontation is uncomfortable. You didn't stay silent. I destroyed my daughter's wedding. No. Claire's voice was firm. Marcus destroyed it the moment he decided to announce his engagement. You just refused to let him control the narrative. The song ended. Elena and Nathan bowed to scattered applause. The reception tried to resume normalcy. Guests returning to conversations, the band playing upbeat music, servers bringing out the elaborate wedding cake. But there was an undercurrent of shock, a sense that everyone was performing normalcy rather than feeling it. I needed air. The country club's garden was lit with fairy lights, creating a magical atmosphere at odds with the turmoil inside. I found a bench near the rose garden and sat, finally allowing myself to breathe. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, my best friend and Elena's godmother, who'd left early to handle a family emergency. Just heard from Patricia. What happened? I stared at the screen, trying to formulate a response. How did you summarize the devastation of the past hour in a text message? Before I could type, another buzz. This time, a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Hartwell. This is Agent Mitchell from the FBI. We've received your documentation regarding Marcus Hartwell's bankruptcy fraud. We'd like to schedule an interview at your earliest convenience. The federal government moved fast when they wanted to. A third buzz. Marcus, please. We need to talk. I can explain everything. I blocked the number without responding. More texts followed in rapid succession. Friends, family members, people I barely knew asking if the rumors were true. I silenced my phone and dropped it into my clutch. The garden gate creaked. Nathan appeared, his tuxedo jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up. Mind if I join you? It's your wedding. You should be inside celebrating. Elena's cutting the cake with her bridesmaids. Girl power moment. He sat beside me, his long legs stretched out in front of him. She's tougher than she looks. She gets that from me. I know. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Mr. Hart. Marcus. He called me last week. I looked at him sharply. He wanted to discuss investment opportunities. Said he had some inside information on a real estate venture that was guaranteed to triple our money within a year. Nathan's jaw tightened. He wanted me to convince Elena to invest her inheritance from her grandmother, the $50,000 Elena had received when my mother passed 2 years ago. Money she'd been carefully saving for a down payment on a house. What did you tell him? That we'd think about it. Nathan shook his head. I didn't know then what I know now. If I had known he was trying to steal from Elena again. You would have what? Punched him? Called the police? I sighed. Marcus is very good at making people believe him. It's his only real talent. Mrs. Hartwell. Victoria, please. You're married to my daughter. We're family now. Victoria. Nathan turned to face me. What you did in there. I know it feels like you ruined Elena's day, but you didn't. You saved her from years of continued manipulation and theft. You stopped him before he could do more damage. That took incredible strength. It took anger. Sometimes anger is just love with its teeth bared. He stood, offering his hand. Come back inside. Elena wants to do the parent dances, and since her father just got arrested, you're the only parent she's got left. The parent dances. I'd forgotten about those. The traditional father-daughter dance was obviously canceled, but Elena had also planned a mother-daughter dance, a more modern edition she'd insisted on. We'd spent weeks choosing the perfect song. I don't know if I can, I admitted. Face all those people, all those pitying stares and shocked whispers. Then don't face them. Face Elena. She needs you. He was right, of course. The ballroom felt different when I returned. The shock had worn off, replaced by something else. Almost a party atmosphere, as if the dramatic revelation had energized rather than deflated the celebration. Guests were dancing, laughing, drinking. Elena's college friends had commandeered the dance floor, executing some complicated routine that involved way too much hip movement for formal dresses. Elena saw me enter and lit up. She rushed over, slightly tipsy from champagne and relief. Mom, it's time for our dance. Sweetheart, are you sure? After everything? Especially after everything. She dragged me toward the dance floor. I need this. We need this. The band struck up Mama's Song by Carrie Underwood. Elena's choice, sweet and sentimental. We moved into position, my arms around my daughter, her head resting on my shoulder like when she was small. I'm proud of you, she whispered, for being strong enough to leave him, for protecting us, for everything. Tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. I'm so sorry about today. Stop apologizing. You didn't do anything wrong. Elena pulled back to look at me. Dad made his choices. You just made sure there were consequences. We swayed to the music, and for a moment, the rest of the ballroom faded away. It was just us, mother and daughter, surviving together the way we always had. The song ended too soon. Elena hugged me tight, then went back to Nathan, who swept her into another dance. I retreated to the edge of the floor, emotionally exhausted. Patricia, Marcus's sister, appeared beside me. She was older than Marcus by 5 years, her face lined with disapproval. Victoria, that was quite a show. Here it comes, I thought. The family defense of the golden boy. I've been telling Marcus for years he was going to crash and burn. Patricia sipped her wine. I just didn't think it would be this spectacular. Or this public. I blinked in surprise. My brother is a narcissistic idiot who's been skating by on charm and our father's connection since he was 18. Patricia's voice was matter of fact. I'm just sorry it took him stealing from his own daughter for someone to finally hold him accountable. I thought you'd be angry with me. For exposing the truth? No. She paused. For doing it at Elena's wedding? Maybe a little. But given what Marcus did, bringing that girl here and announcing their engagement, I'd say he earned every bit of humiliation he got. We stood in silence, watching Elena dance with her new husband, watching the reception continue, despite, or perhaps because of, the chaos. What happens now? Patricia finally asked. Legal battles? Federal investigations? Probably prison time for Marcus, given the embezzlement and fraud charges. I felt oddly detached listing the consequences. The bankruptcy will get dismissed once they find all the hidden assets. We'll have to sell everything to pay his debts. The house? Eventually. My lawyers already filed emergency motions to protect my interests, but it's going to be messy. And Elena? I looked at my daughter, laughing now as Nathan's grandmother taught her some kind of traditional dance. Elena will be fine. She's always been stronger than she knows. This will hurt, but she'll survive it. Like you did. Like I did. The reception continued until midnight. By the end, most people had either left or were too drunk to remember the scandal. Elena and Nathan made their grand exit through a tunnel of sparklers, heading off to begin their honeymoon in Cancun. I stood with the other guests, waving goodbye, watching their limo disappear into the night. Then it was just me, the cleanup crew, and the country club manager tallying up the final charges. Mrs. Hartwell? The manager approached cautiously. I wanted to say, well, that was certainly the most memorable event we've ever hosted. I imagine it will be talked about for years. Decades, he corrected with a slight smile. But for what it's worth, I think you handled it with incredible grace, given the circumstances. Grace? I laughed weakly. Is that what we're calling it? I drove home alone, through familiar streets that felt strange in the darkness. The house, Marcus's and mine for 23 years, looked cold and empty. I'd have to sell it eventually, once the legal battles were resolved. Another loss in the scorched earth of my imploding marriage. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Coffee cup in the sink, wedding outfit laid out on the bed, the folder of documents that had started everything sitting on my desk. No, not the folder. The anonymous text. That's what had started everything. I pulled out my phone, scrolling back to that first message 3 days ago. The screenshot of Marcus's texts to Sienna, the ones detailing his plan to announce their engagement at the wedding. The message had come from a blocked number, with just one line. Thought you should know what he's planning. Who had sent it? Someone from Marcus's office, obviously. Someone who knew about the embezzlement, about the affair, about everything. Someone who decided I deserved to know. A second text from that same blocked number was waiting, sent just minutes ago. Justice was served tonight. Thank you for being brave enough to do what needed to be done. I stared at the message, questions swirling, but exhaustion overwhelmed curiosity. Whoever had helped me, whatever their motives, it was done now. I changed out of my mother of the bride dress, hanging it carefully in the closet. Tomorrow it would just be an expensive reminder of tonight. But right now, standing in my quiet house, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Marcus was gone. His lies were exposed. His victims, me, Elena, his company, even Sienna, all knew the truth now. The path forward would be difficult, messy, probably financially devastating. But it would be honest. No more secrets. No more carefully maintained facades. Just truth. Painful, and clean, and real. My phone buzzed one final time. Elena, from the airport. Love you, Mom. Thank you for being the strongest woman I know. I smiled, tears running down my face, and texted back. Love you too, sweetheart. Enjoy your honeymoon. You deserve it. Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a large glass of wine, and sat in the darkness of my living room, listening to the house settle around me. Tomorrow I would begin the process of rebuilding. I would meet with lawyers, speak to federal agents, start the complicated work of disentangling my life from Marcus's mess. I would field calls from concerned friends, deal with curious neighbors, navigate the aftermath of the most dramatic wedding reception in our town's history. But tonight, I just sat in the darkness and breathed. It was over. Finally, mercifully, over. The war had been fought and won. even if the battlefield was my daughter's wedding reception and the weapon was the truth Marcus had tried so hard to hide. I lifted my wine glass in a solitary toast. To new beginnings, I whispered to the empty room, and to justice, however messy and public it has to be. The house remained silent, but somewhere in that silence I heard the first whisper of possibility, the first hint that maybe, someday, I would be okay. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. And that was enough. The Monday morning sun cut through my kitchen windows with an almost offensive brightness. I sat at the island counter, 3 different legal pads spread before me, each filled with notes from different attorneys: federal prosecutor, divorce lawyer, bankruptcy trustee. My life had become a legal flowchart, and I was the central node where all the chaos converged. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since Saturday night. I'd finally turned off the ringer at 2 a.m. Sunday morning when Marcus's mother called for the 6th time, alternating between screaming accusations and tearful pleas for me to show mercy. Mercy. The word tasted bitter. Mrs. Hartwell? My divorce attorney, Rachel Chen, appeared on my laptop screen for our scheduled video call. She looked exhausted despite the early hour. I've reviewed the bankruptcy trustee's preliminary findings. It's worse than we thought. How much worse? Marcus didn't just hide the lake house. There are 3 rental properties in his brother Greg's name, a boat registered to his college roommate, and approximately $180,000 in offshore accounts he failed to disclose. Rachel's fingers flew across her keyboard. The trustee is moving to dismiss the bankruptcy with prejudice. Marcus won't be allowed to file again for 8 years. I absorbed this information numbly. What does that mean for our divorce? It means every creditor he has will be coming after whatever assets remain: the house, his retirement accounts, everything. And since some of those debts are in your name thanks to his identity theft. She trailed off meaningfully. I'm liable too. Potentially? We're fighting it, obviously. I've got declarations from handwriting experts, testimony from your bank proving you never authorized those accounts, but it's going to be a battle. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. I pushed it away. And the criminal charges? Federal embezzlement, bankruptcy fraud, identity theft, wire fraud. The prosecutor is building a comprehensive case. They're offering him a plea deal: 15 years with possibility of parole after 10 if he provides full disclosure of all assets and cooperates with recovering funds for his victims. 15 years. Marcus would be 68 when he got out. Elena would be 41. An entire lifetime would pass while he sat in a federal prison. Has he accepted the deal? Not yet. His attorney thinks they can fight it, get it reduced to 5 years minimum security. Rachel's tone made clear what she thought of that strategy. But the evidence is overwhelming. Those documents you provided were remarkably comprehensive. The prosecutor called them prosecution ready. I thought of the anonymous source who'd sent me those files. I still didn't know who they were, but they'd essentially handed me a complete roadmap of Marcus's crimes. When do I meet with the FBI? Today at 2. Agent Mitchell wants to walk through the timeline of when you discovered each piece of evidence. It's routine. They need to establish that you weren't complicit in any of the fraud. Complicit? The word stung. I'm the victim here. I know. But you were married to him for 26 years, Victoria. They have to rule out the possibility that you knew about or benefited from his criminal activities. Rachel's expression softened. It's just procedure. Your documentation actually helps. It shows you were investigating, not participating. After Rachel signed off, I sat alone with my legal pads and cold coffee, trying to process how thoroughly my life had imploded in 72 hours. On Saturday morning, I'd been the mother of the bride, worried about seating arrangements and whether the florist would deliver on time. Now I was a witness in a federal criminal case, fighting to protect my own credit while watching my marriage's financial carnage unfold in real time. My phone buzzed. Elena, calling from Cancun. Mom, please tell me the internet is lying. I closed my eyes. What's the internet saying? That Dad was arrested at my wedding. That you exposed some massive fraud scheme during my reception. There's a video, Mom. Someone posted a video on TikTok, and it's gone viral. 4.2 million views. Of course there was a video. Of course it had gone viral. This was the age of smartphones and social media, where private humiliation became public entertainment in seconds. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have warned you this might blow up online. I'm not calling about that. Elena's voice was tight. I'm calling because Nathan's cousin just sent him a link to a news article. Dad's company, Hartwell Manufacturing, they're claiming he embezzled over $2 million, not $280,000. Mom, is that true? 2 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. I only had documentation for $280,000. That's what I gave the police. The FBI released a statement this morning. They've been investigating Dad for 18 months. They say he used shell companies and fake vendors to systematically drain the company's accounts. Mom, some of those vendors were set up in your name. My hands started shaking. What? Victoria Hartwell Consulting. VH Financial Services. Hartwell Property Management. The FBI says they're all fake companies Dad created using your identity, and he's been paying them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Elena's voice cracked. They're saying you might be charged too. That's not possible. I never... But even as I said it, I remembered the documents I'd signed over the years. Tax returns Marcus prepared. Business filings he said were for investment purposes. Had I unknowingly authorized my own identity theft? Mom, you need a criminal attorney, not just a divorce lawyer. I have one. I didn't, but I would within the hour. Elena, I promise you, I knew nothing about any of this. I've been a librarian for 23 years. I don't have business experience or financial expertise. I trusted Marcus to handle our finances while I focused on my career and raising you. I know, Mom. I know. She was crying now. But Nathan's father says that won't matter if they can't prove you weren't involved. Dad signed your name to things, made you a legal party to his schemes. After hanging up with Elena, I immediately called Rachel back. She conferenced in a criminal defense attorney named David Roth, who listened to my panicked explanation with alarming calm. Mrs. Hartwell, I need you to listen very carefully, David said once I'd finished. Do not speak to anyone about this case without an attorney present. Not the FBI, not the bankruptcy trustee, not even friends or family. Anything you say can be used to build a case against you. But I didn't do anything. That may be true, but proving it requires careful legal strategy. If Marcus created companies using your identity, we need to establish a clear timeline showing you had no knowledge or control over these entities. We'll need employment records showing you were working full-time at the library during the period these companies were supposedly operating. Bank records showing you never received payments from them. Testimony from colleagues confirming you weren't running side businesses. The FBI meeting at 2 o'clock suddenly felt much more threatening. Should I cancel with Agent Mitchell? No, that would look like consciousness of guilt. But I'm coming with you, and I'll be instructing you not to answer certain questions. David's tone was firm. This investigation has expanded far beyond what you initially reported. Marcus has implicated you, whether intentionally or through sloppy fraud. We need to protect you. The FBI field office in Philadelphia was exactly what I'd imagined from TV shows. Institutional gray walls, fluorescent lighting, agents in conservative suits moving with purpose. Agent Mitchell met us in the lobby, his handshake firm and professional. Mrs. Hartwell, Mr. Roth, thank you for coming in. The interview room was small and windowless, with a table, 3 chairs, and a recording device. that Agent Mitchell activated with deliberate ceremony. This interview is being recorded. Present are Agent James Mitchell, Mrs. Victoria Hartwell, and her attorney, David Roth. Mrs. Hartwell has agreed to answer questions regarding the criminal activities of her estranged husband, Marcus Hartwell. He looked at me directly. You understand this interview is voluntary and you can stop at any time? Yes. Good. Let's start with when you first became aware of your husband's financial crimes. I walked him through the timeline, the anonymous text message 3 days before the wedding, the documentation that arrived shortly after, my verification of the information, my decision to confront Marcus publicly. And you had no knowledge of these crimes before receiving the anonymous message? None. Mrs. Hartwell, we've identified 18 shell companies Marcus created between 2019 and 2024. 5 of them list you as owner or principal officer. You're saying you had no knowledge of these companies? Correct. I never created any companies. I've worked full-time as a research librarian for over 2 decades. Agent Mitchell slid a document across the table. This is an application for an EIN, an Employer Identification Number, for Victoria Hartwell Consulting, dated March 2020. That's your signature at the bottom, correct? I stared at the signature. It looked like mine. The loops and curves were familiar. It looks like my signature. But I don't remember signing this. Don't remember, or didn't sign, David interjected smoothly. My client is telling you she has no memory of this document. Given that she's identified dozens of instances where Marcus forged her signature on other documents, we'd need a handwriting expert to verify authenticity. Agent Mitchell pulled out more documents. Each one had my signature. Some I recognized: tax returns, refinancing papers Marcus had brought home for me to sign. Others were completely foreign: business filings, bank account applications, vendor agreements. Mrs. Hartwell, did your husband regularly ask you to sign documents without fully explaining them? Yes. The admission felt like defeat. He handled all our finances. I worked, raised our daughter, managed the household. Marcus paid the bills, filed our taxes, managed investments. I trusted him. So it's possible you signed these documents creating shell companies without realizing what they were? I wanted to say no. I wanted to claim I was too smart, too careful to be duped like that. But looking at those signatures, my signatures, I couldn't be certain. It's possible, I admitted quietly. Marcus would bring home stacks of papers and tell me they were tax documents or insurance forms. I'd sign them while cooking dinner or helping Elena with homework. I didn't read every line of every document. That's going to be a problem, Agent Mitchell said, not unkindly. Because several of these companies received payments totaling over $900,000 from Hartwell Manufacturing. If you're listed as the owner, you're legally liable for those fraudulent receipts. The room felt too small, too hot. But I never received any of that money. I don't have $900,000. I'm a librarian making $68,000 a year. We know. The money went into accounts Marcus controlled. But proving you weren't complicit in the scheme requires demonstrating you had no knowledge of these companies, no access to the funds, and no unusual wealth during the period in question. David leaned forward. My client's bank records will show modest deposits consistent with her library salary. Her spending patterns reflect a middle-class lifestyle. She drove a 7-year-old Honda, bought clothes at Target, and took 1 vacation per year. There's no evidence of unexplained wealth. Except the house, Agent Mitchell countered. 4,200 square feet in one of Philadelphia's most expensive suburbs, worth approximately $1.2 million. That's not consistent with a librarian's salary. The house was purchased with my inheritance, I said quickly. When my father died in 2002, he left me $400,000. We used it for the down payment and kept the mortgage reasonable. And the improvements? The kitchen renovation in 2018? The new roof and windows in 2020? Those weren't cheap? Marcus said he'd saved bonuses from work. He handled the contractors, the financing, everything. My voice was rising. I didn't question where the money came from because I thought we were financially stable. He showed me retirement statements, investment accounts. I thought we were planning for the future. Those statements were fabricated, Agent Mitchell said gently. Marcus created fake documents showing retirement savings that didn't exist. The money for those renovations came from his embezzlement. The implications crashed over me. I'd been living in a house built on stolen money, driving a car purchased with fraud, eating meals paid for by Marcus's victims. Everything I thought was legitimate was actually evidence of crime. I didn't know, I whispered. I swear to God, I didn't know. The interview continued for 3 more hours. Agent Mitchell walked me through every financial decision from the past decade, every signature, every document. David objected frequently, instructing me not to answer questions that might imply knowledge or complicity. By the time we finished, I was emotionally wrung out, my voice hoarse from explanations and denials. "We'll be in touch," Agent Mitchell said at the door. "We're still investigating, still building the case. For what it's worth, Mrs. Hartwell, I believe you. I think you were a victim of your husband's manipulation, but I'm not the prosecutor. They'll make the final determination about charges." In David's car, I finally broke down. Great, heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep in my chest. 26 years of marriage, reduced to this, me defending myself against charges of crimes I didn't commit, proving I wasn't a criminal, just a fool. "Am I going to prison?" I asked when I could finally speak. "No." David's voice was firm. "You're not. We'll establish your ignorance of the scheme, demonstrate you received no benefit from it, and show you were as much a victim as anyone. It'll take time and money, but you're not going to prison." How much time? How much money? Months. Maybe a year of legal fees totaling $50,000 to $100,000. He saw my face. "I know that's a lot, but it's better than prison. Money I didn't have to fight charges for crimes I didn't commit." The injustice of it was staggering. Over the next 6 weeks, my life became a grinding routine of legal meetings, depositions, and media management. The TikTok video from Elena's wedding had spawned dozens of news articles, think pieces, and even a segment on a national morning show about why women stay with financial predators. I'd become a cautionary tale. Sienna Chen, Marcus's former fiancée, gave an interview to People magazine, portraying herself as another victim of his charm and lies. She claimed she'd had no idea Marcus was married, though my attorney had screenshots of text messages proving she knew. The court of public opinion was more forgiving to the 28-year-old mistress than to the 51-year-old wife. Marcus, meanwhile, had rejected the plea deal and was preparing for trial. His attorney was building a defense that essentially blamed me, claiming I'd been the financial mastermind and he'd just followed my instructions. It was a desperate strategy that no one believed, but it forced me to remain vigilant, documenting every interaction, preserving every piece of evidence. Elena came home from her honeymoon quieter, more subdued. The viral video had followed her to Cancun, where hotel staff recognized her and offered pitying smiles. She'd spent half her honeymoon dealing with concerned calls from friends, and the other half watching her father's crimes unfold across news sites. "I'm thinking about changing my name," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "Back to just your maiden name, Mitchell. I don't want to be associated with Dad anymore." "That's your choice, sweetheart. No one would blame you." Nathan's already getting questions at work. His boss asked if he was the guy from the viral wedding video. It's humiliating. I reached across the table, taking her hand. "It will pass. Eventually, something else will capture everyone's attention and this will fade into the background. Will it? Elena's eyes were haunted. Or will I always be the bride whose father was arrested at her wedding? Will every job interview, every introduction, every new friendship start with people Googling me and finding that video? I didn't have an answer for her. The internet was forever, and her wedding had become digital spectacle for millions. The trial began in late September, 4 months after the wedding. The prosecution's case was methodical and damning. Witness after witness from Hartwell Manufacturing, bank records, expert testimony about the shell companies. Marcus sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, having lost weight in jail, his silver hair now showing gray roots. I attended every day of the trial, sitting in the gallery with Elena, watching my husband, still legally my husband, be systematically destroyed by evidence of his greed and betrayal. The most devastating testimony came from Thomas Hartwell, the company's founder and Marcus's uncle. The elderly man, now in his 80s, took the stand with a walker and spoke in a voice that shook with anger and grief. Marcus was family, Thomas said. When his father, my brother, died, I brought Marcus into the company, trained him, trusted him with the finances because blood meant something. I thought it meant loyalty. He paused, wiping his eyes. He stole from me for 7 years. He looked me in the eye at Christmas dinners and 4th of July barbecues while systematically robbing the company my father built. He destroyed people's retirement funds. He cost us contracts. He nearly bankrupted us. And he did it while claiming to be doing his best for the family business. Marcus's attorney tried to rehabilitate the testimony on cross-examination, suggesting Thomas was mistaken or that other employees could have been responsible. But the old man was unshakable. I know who did this, Thomas said firmly. The evidence is clear. Marcus did this. My nephew, my family. He destroyed everything. The prosecution rested after 2 weeks. Marcus's defense lasted 3 days and consisted mainly of attacking the forensic accounting and suggesting I was the real criminal. His attorney put on a handwriting expert who claimed some of the shell company documents showed signs of my genuine signature, implying I'd knowingly participated. When I was called to testify, David had prepared me extensively. Answer only what's asked. Don't volunteer information. Remain calm. Marcus's attorney, a sharp woman named Judith Pierce, circled me like a predator. Mrs. Hartwell, you expect this jury to believe you had no idea your husband was running multiple companies in your name. I had no idea because they weren't real companies. They were fraudulent entities he created. But you signed the formation documents. I signed papers Marcus told me were tax documents. I trusted my husband. Convenient trust. Judith's voice was dripping with skepticism. You're a research librarian, correct? Someone trained to verify information, check sources, investigate claims? Yes. Yet you never researched your own finances? Never verified these documents you were signing? The question stung because it was true. I hadn't. I'd been complacent, trusting, naive. I trusted my husband, I repeated. That was my mistake. Trusting him or getting caught? David objected. The judge sustained. But the damage was done. The jury had heard the insinuation. The cross-examination continued for hours. Judith Pierce picked apart every financial decision, every signature, every moment where I should have known something was wrong, but apparently didn't. She painted me as either complicit or impossibly stupid. By the time I was dismissed, I felt like I'd been the one on trial. The jury deliberated for 4 days. I spent those days in a hotel near the courthouse, unable to eat, unable to sleep, checking my phone obsessively for updates. Elena stayed with me, both of us trapped in this limbo of waiting. When the verdict came, we rushed to the courtroom. Guilty, on all counts. Marcus showed no emotion as the clerk read count after count: embezzlement, wire fraud, bankruptcy fraud, identity theft, guilty, guilty, guilty. 18 counts total. The judge scheduled sentencing for 6 weeks later but revoked bail immediately. Marcus was led away in handcuffs, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just hollow exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. David had prepared a statement, which I read in a monotone voice. I'm relieved that justice has been served. My focus now is on rebuilding my life and supporting my daughter. I hope this conviction brings some closure to Marcus Hartwell's many victims. Short, professional, revealing nothing of the churning emotions underneath. The sentencing hearing in November was brief. The judge, a severe woman named Patricia Corrigan, showed no mercy. Mr. Hartwell, your crimes were not impulsive errors in judgment. They were calculated, systematic, and sustained over nearly a decade. You stole from your employer, your family, and your wife. You betrayed every trust placed in you. You've shown no remorse, instead attempting to blame others for your actions. Marcus tried to speak, but Judge Corrigan cut him off. 22 years in federal prison, followed by 10 years supervised release. You will make full restitution to all victims, though I doubt you possess the means to do so. You will forfeit all assets obtained through your criminal enterprise, and you will live with the knowledge that you destroyed your family, your reputation, and your freedom through your own greed and arrogance. 22 years. Marcus would be 75 when he got out. Elena would be 48. He'd miss her entire adult life, her career, her children if she had them, every milestone and memory. As guards led him away, Marcus looked at me one final time. I saw hatred there, and blame, and a desperate denial of responsibility. He still believed he was the victim. I looked away. The divorce was finalized in January, 8 months after Elena's wedding. I got nothing. The house was seized to pay restitution. Our accounts were frozen and redistributed to victims. Even my retirement fund was partially garnished for debts Marcus had hidden in my name. After all legal fees and settlements, I was left with $18,000 and a damaged credit score that would follow me for years. I moved into a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood, downsizing from 4,200 square feet to 800. Elena and Nathan helped me move, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs, hanging curtains, assembling cheap furniture from IKEA. It's cozy, Elena said diplomatically, surveying the tiny living room. It's all I can afford, I replied. But it's mine. Nobody can take it, and it's not built on anyone's suffering. That night, alone in my new apartment, I made myself tea and sat on the second-hand couch, looking around at my reduced circumstances. The contrast to my former life was stark, from marble countertops to laminate, from a neighborhood where houses cost millions to one where they cost thousands. But I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, tired of reporters and creditors. But something made me pick up. Mrs. Hartwell? This is Charlotte Reed. We've never spoken. But I'm the one who sent you the documents. My anonymous source. After all these months, finally revealing herself. Why? It was the only question that mattered. I was Marcus's administrative assistant before Sienna. He fired me when I refused to backdate invoices for his fake companies. I spent 6 months documenting everything, building a case, but I was terrified to come forward. He threatened to destroy me if I talked. Her voice was steady but emotional. When I saw he was planning to announce his engagement at your daughter's wedding, using your family as props for his narcissism, I couldn't stay silent anymore. You deserve to know the truth. You saved me, I said quietly. You saved Elena from years of continued manipulation. Thank you. Did you get charged? Charlotte asked. I followed the trial. I was worried they'd try to implicate you. The charges were dropped 2 weeks ago. Insufficient evidence of knowing participation. The relief still felt fresh. But it was close. Too close. I'm sorry for what you went through. But I'm glad he's finally facing consequences. We talked for an hour. Two women connected by Marcus's destruction, finding solidarity in survival. Charlotte had since found a better job at a company that valued ethics over profit. She was rebuilding, just like me. After hanging up, I stood at my apartment window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus was adjusting to his new reality. Somewhere in their new home, Elena and Nathan were building their life together. And here I was, 51 years old, starting over with almost nothing, but not quite nothing. I had my daughter's respect. I had the truth. I had the knowledge that I'd stood up when it mattered, that I'd chosen transparency over comfortable lies, that I'd protected Elena's future even at great cost to myself. My phone buzzed. Elena. Love you, Mom. Proud of you every single day. I smiled, tears running down my face. To new beginnings, I whispered to the empty apartment, raising my teacup in a solitary toast. And to the truth, however devastating it has to be. Outside, the city hummed with life and possibility. Tomorrow I would wake up and continue rebuilding, paying bills, repairing credit, reconstructing a life from ruins. But tonight, I just stood at the window and breathed, free, finally, completely free. The wedding had been 8 months ago. The viral video had faded from trending topics, replaced by newer scandals and spectacles. My name no longer appeared in news searches. The legal battles were finished. Marcus was gone. And I was still here, still standing, still moving forward. It wasn't the life I'd planned when I walked down the aisle 26 years ago. It wasn't the comfortable retirement I'd imagined. But it was honest, and it was mine, and it was enough. I closed the curtains, finished my tea, and went to bed in my small apartment, in my new life, and slept deeply for the first time in years. The reckoning was complete. The rebuilding had begun. And somehow, impossibly, I was going to be okay. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.